Merrick Caldwell adjusted his silk tie, looking down his nose at the man sitting at the defense table. To Merrick, Darius Holt was just another statistic, uneducated, broke, and guilty by appearance. Merrick had the judge in his pocket and the verdict already written in his mind. He smirked, mocking Darius's silence, mistaking patience for stupidity. But Merrick forgot the first rule of the jungle. The most dangerous predators do not roar before they strike. He did not know that the man in the shabby clothes was not a victim. He was the bait. And when Darius finally reached into his jacket, he did not pull out a plea deal. He pulled out a badge that would burn Merrick's world to the ground. The air in courtroom 4B of the Superior Court smelled of lemon polish and old fear. It was a smell Merrick Caldwell loved. It was the scent of victory. Merrick checked his reflection in the screen of his phone. He was the picture of legal dominance. His bespoke Navy suit cost more than the defendant's car, assuming the defendant even owned one. His hair was silvered at the temples, a calculated aesthetic that screamed experience. He was not just a lawyer. He was a shark in Italian leather. He glanced to his left. Sitting at the plaintiff's table was his client, Sterling Langford. Sterling was a massive real estate developer, the kind of man who bulldozed orphanages to build luxury condos and slept like a baby afterward. Today they were here to evict a nuisance. Merrick turned his gaze to the defense table. Sitting there alone was Darius Holt. Darius was a large black man, broad-shouldered, wearing a faded gray flannel shirt and work boots that had seen better days. He sat with a stillness that Merrick found irritating. Usually defendants in Darius's position were fidgeting, sweating, or frantically flipping through public defender pamphlets. Darius just sat there, his hands clasped loosely on the empty mahogany table. No notepad, no pen, no lawyer. Your Honor. Merrick's voice boomed, projecting that buttery baritone that had charmed juries for years. We are ready to proceed. It seems the defendant has chosen to represent himself. A choice, I might add, that is as ill-advised as his squatting on my client's property. Judge Everett Voss, a man whose face looked like a road map of vascular bursting, peered over his spectacles. Voss and Merrick played golf at the Country Club of the South. This was not a trial. It was a formality. Mr. Holt, Judge Voss sighed, sounding bored already. Do you understand the proceedings today? You are facing eviction and damages for illegal tenancy and property defacement. Do you not have counsel? Darius looked up. His eyes were dark, unreadable. When he spoke, his voice was a low rumble, soft but carrying to the back of the room. No, Your Honor, I will speak for myself. Merrick suppressed a chuckle. He leaned over to Sterling. Watch this, he whispered. I will have him crying in minutes. We will have the eviction order signed. Just get it done, Sterling grunted, checking his Rolex. I have a demolition crew on standby. Merrick stood up, buttoning his jacket. He did not walk to the podium. He prowled the center of the room. He wanted to make a show of this. He wanted to humiliate this man who dared to delay a multi-million-dollar project. Mr. Holt, Merrick began, not even looking at Darius, but smiling at the court reporter. Let us keep this simple for you. You reside at Oakwood Drive. Correct. I stay there, Darius said. You stay there, Merrick repeated, making air quotes with his fingers and eliciting a few snickers from the few law students sitting in the gallery. Language is important, Mr. Holt. You do not own it. You do not rent it. You just exist there like a fungus. Objection, Darius said quietly. Judge Voss frowned. On what grounds? Argumentative, Darius said. And insulting. Overruled. Voss waved his hand dismissively. Mr. Caldwell is merely establishing the nature of your occupancy. Watch your tone, Mr. Holt. Merrick smirked. It was too easy. Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Holt, My client, Mr. Langford, purchased the deed to that property in a foreclosure auction. You have refused to vacate. You have refused to communicate. You are, by definition, a squatter. An uneducated man might not understand property law, but surely you understand what get out means. Merrick paused for effect, waiting for the outburst. He wanted Darius to get angry. He wanted the angry black man stereotype to flare up so he could point at it and say, "See, this is why he does not belong in our neighborhood." But Darius did not flinch. He just watched Merrick. It was the way a wolf watches a deer prancing in a meadow. "I understand the law," Darius said calmly. "Do you?" Merrick laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Did you go to Harvard? Yale? Maybe a night class at the community center? Because the paperwork you filed, handwritten I might add, was barely legible. You cited statutes that do not exist. You are wasting the court's time because you are looking for a payout. You think if you sit there and look formidable, Mr. Langford will write you a check to go away." Merrick walked right up to the defense table, placing his hands on the wood and leaning in close to Darius. He lowered his voice, but kept it loud enough for the microphone to catch. "Here is the reality. Mr. Holt, you are out of your depth. You are a relic in a gentrifying world. You have no money, no power, and clearly no education. Why do you not just pack your bags and go back to whatever hole you crawled out of?" The courtroom went silent. Even the stenographer paused. It was a step too far, even for Merrick. Darius slowly unclasped his hands. He leaned forward, matching Merrick's proximity. "Are you done performing, Mr. Caldwell?" Darius asked. Merrick blinked, taken aback by the sudden sharpness in the man's diction. I'm just getting started," Merrick sneered, straightening up. "I call my first witness, Mr. Sterling Langford." The examination of Sterling Langford was a master class in softballs. Merrick lobbed questions, and Sterling knocked them out of the park, painting a picture of a benevolent businessman terrorized by a dangerous squatter. "He threatened my surveyors," Sterling lied, his face flushing with fake indignation. "We tried to inspect the foundation, and this man stood on the porch with a shovel. We were terrified." Merrick nodded sympathetically. "A shovel, a weapon. And did he say anything?" "He said, 'This is not your land,'" Sterling said. "Just delusional." "Thank you, Mr. Langford." Merrick turned to Darius. "Your witness, Mr. Holt, if you even know how to cross-examine." Darius stood up. He did not have notes. He walked around the table and stood in the center of the room. He looked at Sterling. "Mr. Langford," Darius said. His voice had changed. The slightly southern drawl was gone, replaced by a clipped, precise neutrality. "You purchased the deed via a shell company called Obsidian Holdings." "Correct." Sterling squinted. "Yes, that is standard business. And Obsidian Holdings is registered in the Cayman Islands, but operates out of a post office box in Delaware." Merrick stood up immediately. "Objection? Relevance. My client's business structure is not on trial here. It goes to the validity of the deed." "Your Honor," Darius said to the judge, "if the purchasing entity does not legally exist in the state of Georgia, the transaction is void." Judge Voss looked annoyed. He tapped his pen. "I will allow it, but make it quick. Mr. Holt, do not play lawyer." Darius turned back to Sterling. "Is Obsidian Holdings licensed to purchase residential deeds in Georgia?" "My lawyers handle that," Sterling snapped. "I am a developer, not a clerk." "Right," Darius said. "You are a developer. You developed the Riverwalk complex, did you not?" "Objection," Merrick shouted. "Relevance. It establishes a pattern of behavior." Darius countered instantly. "At Riverwalk, tenants were forcibly removed under false foreclosure notices, the same notices I received." "Sustained." Voss barked. "Stick to this case, Mr. Holt, or I will hold you in contempt." Darius did not argue. He just nodded as if he expected that ruling. Mr. Langford, you claim I threatened you with a shovel. What time was that? Sterling said confidently. Around the afternoon. The afternoon, Darius repeated. You are sure? Absolutely. I wrote it down. Darius reached into the back pocket of his jeans. Merrick tensed, half expecting a weapon, but Darius pulled out a folded piece of paper. Your Honor, I would like to submit Defense Exhibit A, Darius said. Merrick scoffed. He cannot just pull papers out of his pocket. It is a receipt, Darius said, walking it to the bailiff. From the county clerk's office, time-stamped during the afternoon in question. I was paying a parking ticket downtown. Unless I can teleport, I was not on the porch with a shovel. The bailiff handed the receipt to the judge. Voss looked at it, his bushy eyebrows knitting together. It was an official government document. It was irrefutable. Sterling's face went pale. He looked at Merrick. Merrick realized he had been sloppy. He had not vetted the lie. He assumed Darius was a nobody who would not have receipts. A clerical error regarding the time, Merrick interjected smoothly. My client was traumatized. Time is fluid in those moments. Drama makes you check a clock and write it down wrong. Darius asked, raising an eyebrow. Move on, Mr. Holt. Voss grumbled, though he looked at Sterling with a hint of suspicion now. The lie was too obvious. No further questions for this witness, Darius said, sitting back down. Merrick felt a prickle of sweat on his neck. That was not luck. The specific question about the shell company, the perfectly timed alibi. This guy knew what he was doing. He has had help, Merrick thought. Some legal aid clinic told him what to say. That is all. Merrick decided to stop playing with his food. He needed to crush this now. The plaintiff calls the defendant, Darius Holt, to the stand. This was it, the kill shot. Merrick was going to destroy him on the stand. Darius walked to the witness box. He took the oath with a solemnity that unsettled the court reporter. He sat down, the old wood chair creaking under his frame. Merrick approached him, holding a thick binder. Mr. Holt, Merrick began, his voice dripping with condescension. Let us talk about you. You have no employment record for years. No tax returns filed under the name Darius Holt in this state. No credit score. To the modern world, you are a ghost. How do you pay for food? Begging, stealing. I have savings, Darius said. Savings? Merrick laughed. From what? We ran a background check. You were in the military. Dishonorable discharge. Honorable. Darius corrected. Medical retirement. Sure. And since then, drifting. You found an empty house in a nice neighborhood and decided to camp out. You thought because it was in probate, no one would notice. I have a lease, Darius said. A fake lease. Merrick slammed his hand on the railing. Written on a napkin. Signed by a dead man. Signed by the previous owner, Mr. Ellison, shortly before he died. Darius said, it is a long-term lease. Mr. Ellison had dementia. Merrick countered, though he knew this was a gray area in the case file. He was not of sound mind. You took advantage of a dying old man. You preyed on him, just like you are preying on the court's patience today. Merrick walked back to his table and picked up a document. Mr. Holt, I have here an affidavit from the Neighborhood Association. They say you bring unsavory characters to the house at late hours. Black SUVs, men in suits, drug deals. Darius actually smiled. A small, cold smile. Not drug deals. Then what? What does an unemployed man with no education do with men in SUVs at midnight? We talk about the law, Darius said. Merrick stopped. The courtroom went quiet. The law. Merrick repeated deadpan. You talk about the law? Yes. Let me guess. You are a sovereign citizen. Merrick mocked. You think the laws of the United States do not apply to you because of some flag fringe theory. The laws apply to me very strictly, Darius said. More strictly than they apply to you, apparently. Excuse me. Merrick bristled. You failed to file a motion of discovery before this trial. Mr. Caldwell, Darius said calmly. You assumed I would not have any evidence. So, you did not ask for it. That is a violation of Georgia Civil Practice Act. Merrick froze. The specific citation hung in the air like a gunshot. You also failed to disclose your financial conflict of interest with Judge Voss. Darius continued, his voice rising just an octave. Specifically, the joint investment in the Blue Heron Golf Course development, which Mr. Langford is also a primary investor in. Judge Voss's gavel fell out of his hand. It clattered onto the bench with a loud crack. The color drained from Merrick's face. That is preposterous slander. I move to strike, is it? Darius reached into his jacket again. Merrick flinched. Bailiff, he is reaching. The bailiff moved his hand to his belt, stepping forward. Darius moved slowly. He did not pull out a weapon. He pulled out a thick sealed envelope. He placed it on the stand. I am not uneducated. Mr. Caldwell, Darius said, his voice dropping to a terrifying register. And I am not a squatter. You asked about the men in the black SUVs. You asked about my lack of a digital footprint. Darius stood up in the witness box. He looked tall, looming. You did not find the employment record because my record is classified. Level 5 clearance. What are you talking about? Merrick stammered, looking at the judge, who was now sweating profusely. You asked for my credentials, Darius said. I think it is time I showed you. He opened the envelope. The envelope did not contain a lease. It did not contain a handwritten letter from a dead man. It contained a leather wallet worn at the edges, the kind carried by men who worked, not men who sat in offices. Darius flipped it open. A gold shield caught the overhead fluorescent lights, flashing like a warning beacon. Next to it was an ID card with a holographic seal. My name is Darius Holt, he said, his voice booming without the need for a microphone. But for some time now, I have been operating under a cover identity. I am a senior special agent with the Department of Justice Public Integrity Section. Merrick Caldwell felt his knees turn to water. He gripped the edge of the plaintiff's table so hard his knuckles turned white. This is a trick, a fake badge. He bought it online. Bailiff, Darius said, not taking his eyes off Judge Voss, please inspect the credentials, and while you are at it, call the number on the back of the card. It routes directly to the Washington field office. The bailiff, a young man named Deputy Hayes, who looked terrified, gingerly took the wallet. He looked at the badge, then at the judge. Your Honor, it looks real. It has the federal seal. It is a prop, Sterling shouted, standing up, his face red. He is a squatter. He is lying. Evict him. Sit down, Mr. Langford, Darius commanded. It was not a request. The authority in his voice was absolute, the kind that came from years of commanding rooms much more dangerous than this one. Sterling said. Darius turned back to Merrick. You called me uneducated. Mr. Caldwell, you were right about one thing. I did not go to Harvard. I went to the University of Chicago on the G-bill after doing tour in Afghanistan as a military police investigator. I passed the bar exam in multiple states on my first try. I did not become a corporate lawyer because I do not like bullies in suits. He walked out of the witness box, moving freely. Now the judge did not stop him. Voss looked like he was having a cardiac event. Why were you in the house? Voss croaked, his voice barely a whisper. The house at Oakwood Drive, Darius said, pacing in front of the bench. It was not just a random foreclosure. It was the registered drop point for a money laundering scheme involving the Blue Heron Development Project. We had been watching that house for a while. We knew someone was picking up cash drops from the mailbox. We just needed to know who. Darius stopped and pointed a finger at Sterling. We thought it was just him, a corrupt developer skimming off the top. So I moved in. I became the squatter. I became the nuisance. I wanted to see who would come to kick me out. I wanted to see who was desperate enough to reclaim that property before the feds seized it. Darius turned his eyes to Merrick. And then you showed up, Mr. Caldwell. You and your aggressive tactics. You filed paperwork fast. You bypassed inspections. You tried to bribe me to leave. And when I would not leave, you brought me here to this specific courtroom. Merrick was hyperventilating. He loosened his silk tie. I was just representing my client. I have no knowledge of any criminal activity. Do you not? Darius asked. You mentioned the uneducated handwritten motions I filed. Did you actually read them, Merrick? Or did you just scoff at the handwriting? I glanced at them. Asterisk if you had read them, Darius said, a shark-like grin appearing on his face. You would have noticed that the statutes I cited were actually page numbers from your own hidden ledgers. Merrick's eyes went wide. That is right, Darius continued. We did not just watch the house. We tapped the phones. We accessed the servers of Obsidian Holdings. We know that Obsidian Holdings is not just a shell company. It is a joint venture, 50% owned by Sterling Langford and 50% owned by a blind trust. Beneficiary Everett Voss. The gallery gasped. The law students in the back were furiously typing on their phones. This was the scandal of the decade happening in real time. Asterisk lies. Judge Voss shrieked, standing up. Bailiff, arrest this man. He is in contempt. He is lying in my court. Deputy Hayes looked at the judge, then at Darius, then at the badge still in his hand. He did not move. He is not lying. Everett, a new voice said from the back of the room. The heavy oak doors of the courtroom swung open. Standing in the doorway was a woman in a sharp gray blazer, flanked by 4 men in tactical vests marked FBI. Agent Sophia Hale. Darius introduced her without looking back. She is the one who has been listening to your phone calls recently, Your Honor. Asterisk Agent Hale walked down the aisle, her heels clicking rhythmically on the linoleum. She carried a laptop and a portable speaker. Judge Voss, Hale said coolly. Sterling Langford. Merrick Caldwell, please remain seated. The exits are secured. You cannot do this. Merrick stammered. This is a civil hearing. You have no jurisdiction. Actually, Agent Hale said, setting the speaker on the court reporter's desk. When a civil hearing is used as an instrument to further a racketeering conspiracy, it becomes federal jurisdiction. And Mr. Caldwell, you are not just a lawyer today. You are a co-conspirator. I am an officer of the court, Merrick yelled, sweat streaming down his face. I demand to see a warrant. You want a warrant? Darius asked. I have several. One for the search of your office, one for your home, one for Langford's penthouse, one for the judge's chambers, and one for your person. Merrick slumped into his chair. He looked at Sterling. Sterling was trembling, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped rat. Play the tape. Sophia, Darius said. Agent Hale pressed a button. The audio was crystal clear. It filled the silent courtroom. Voice 1. Merrick, the squatter is still there. Everett, he is digging around the porch. If he finds the basement access, we are cooked. Voice 2. Judge Voss, just get him out. Merrick, use the eviction statute. I will sign whatever you put in front of me. Fast track it. Bypass the sheriff's notice. Voice 1. Merrick, what if he fights it? He looks like a thug. Voice 2. Judge Voss, he is a nobody. Just humiliate him. Make him look like trash. No one cares about a broke black man in this county. We will have him out, bulldoze the house, and destroy the records in the basement by the end of the week. Voice 3. Sterling. And the money. The cash in the wall safe. Voice 1. Merrick. Safe and sound. Once the house is down, we move the debris to the landfill and recover the box. Just get this Holt guy out of the way. Click. The recording ended? The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Darius looked at Merrick. A thug. Trash. A nobody. Merrick could not speak. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The arrogance, the smirk, the polished veneer, it was all gone. He looked small. You judged me by my clothes, Darius said softly. You judged me by my skin. You assumed that because I did not wear a suit, I did not have power. You assumed that because I spoke softly, I did not know the law. Darius walked over to the defense table where he had sat alone. He picked up the uneducated handwritten motion Merrick had mocked earlier. You were right about the basement. By the way, Darius said, we found the safe, cash, and marked bills tied to the Brad payments for the zoning permits on the Riverwalk project. You entered the property without a warrant. Merrick tried one last desperate legal hail. Fruit of the poisonous tree. The evidence is inadmissible. Darius laughed. It was a genuine, hearty laugh. Mr. Caldwell, you really were not listening, were you? I did not break in. I have a lease. Remember the one you said was fake. Darius pulled a document from the evidence pile. Mr. Ellison, the previous owner, was a patriot. He contacted the FBI when he realized Langford was pressuring him. He signed the lease over to the Department of Justice for a nominal amount before he passed away. I am the legal tenant. I gave myself permission to search the basement. Merrick's jaw dropped. The legal trap was perfect. There was no way out. Judge Voss stood up, his robes looking like a costume now. I want to cut a deal. I was coerced. Merrick forced me. Oh, shut up, Everett. Sterling snapped. You're the one who wanted the golf course. Gentlemen, please. Agent Hale interrupted. You will have plenty of time to discuss who betrayed whom in the holding cell. She nodded to the tactical team. Take them into custody. The agents moved in. They did not go for Darius. They went for the bench and the plaintiff's stable. Deputy Hayes, the bailiff, looked unsure of what to do. Darius nodded to him. It is okay, Deputy. You are doing a good job. Just step aside. Hayes stepped back, watching as the FBI agents handcuffed Judge Voss. The judge was crying, actual tears running down his red face. Then they moved to Sterling, who went limp, dragged out of his chair. Finally, they came to Merrick. Merrick Caldwell stood up, trying to maintain some dignity. He smoothed his jacket. He looked at Darius one last time. You ruined my life, Merrickist. Do you know who I am? I know senators. I know governors. This is not over. Darius stepped in close, nose to nose with the disgraced lawyer. You are right, Merrick. It is not over because after we are done with the criminal charges, I am going to sue you for malicious prosecution. And since I am a lawyer, too, I am going to represent myself. Darius paused, letting the smirk return, but this time it was on his face. And trust me, I am very expensive. As the agents led Merrick away in handcuffs, the sound of the metal ratcheting tight echoed through the courtroom. But the story was not quite done, because karma had one more layer to peel back. The walk from courtroom for B to the prisoner transport bay was short, but for Merrick Caldwell, it felt like a descent into the underworld. Usually, when Merrick walked these marble hallways, his heels clicked with rhythmic arrogance. He would nod at the bailiffs, wink at the clerks, and breeze past the security checkpoints with the air of a man who owned the building. Today, however, his gait was shuffled, restricted by the heavy steel chain connecting his ankles. The handcuffs bit into his wrists, pinching the skin beneath his expensive French cuffs. Deputy Hayes, the young bailiff Merrick had ignored for years, held his upper arm with a grip that was professional but firm. There was no sympathy in Hayes's eyes. The hierarchy of the courthouse had flipped in a single hour. "Watch your head," Hayes said as they reached the loading dock. It was the same phrase Merrick had heard officers say to thousands of his clients. He had never thought it would apply to him. As the heavy metal doors of the loading dock swung open, Merrick braced himself. He had tipped off his publicist earlier in the day about a landmark victory against a squatter. He had expected a few reporters to be waiting to capture his triumphant smile. The reporters were there, all right, but they were not looking for a smile. A wall of camera flashes exploded the moment Merrick stepped into the daylight. The glare was blinding. Microphones were shoved toward him like spears. "Mr. Caldwell, is it true you laundered money for the cartel? Merrick, are you going to testify against Judge Voss? Look here. Look at the camera. How does it feel to be disbarred?" Merrick instinctively tried to raise a hand to shield his face, but the handcuffs jerked him back. He stumbled, nearly falling face first onto the concrete. A roar of laughter erupted from the press pool. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution photographer, a woman Merrick had once threatened to sue for libel, snapped the photo that would end up on the front page. Merrick Caldwell, knees buckled, hair disheveled, looking terrified. "Get him in the van," Agent Hale ordered. He was shoved into the back of a federal transport vehicle. The door slammed shut, plunging him into darkness. The air inside smelled of stale sweat, vomit, and pine cleaner. He was not alone. Sterling was there, curled in a ball on the bench, weeping opally. Judge Voss was staring at the wall, muttering case law to himself like a madman. Merrick sat as far away from them as possible. He closed his eyes, praying this was a nightmare, but the vibration of the engine under his seat was real. The sirens wailing were real. The ride to the Federal Detention Center was the longest of his life. The Federal Detention Center in downtown Atlanta was a fortress of gray concrete and fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry hornets. This was the booking. Merrick knew the procedure on paper. He had read the reports. He had watched the dash cam footage. But reading about drowning is very different from inhaling water. "Name," the intake officer barked. He was a thick-necked man with a buzz cut who did not look up from his computer. "Merrick Caldwell," Merrick said, trying to summon a shred of dignity. "I demand to speak to the warden. There has been a mistake." The officer looked up. He stared at Merrick for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then he looked at the two FBI agents standing behind Merrick. "He wants the warden," the officer deadpanned. The agents chuckled. "Strip," the officer said. "Excuse me." Merrick recoiled. "You heard me. Clothing, jewelry, everything in the bin now." Merrick's hands trembled as he undid the buttons of his bespoke navy jacket. He folded it carefully out of habit. He removed his silk tie and Hermes, a gift from a client he had kept out of prison on a technicality. He slid off his Rolex Submariner. One by one, the artifacts of his identity were stripped away. Without the suit, without the watch, without the shoes that added height, Merrick looked small, pale, soft. He was a man who had spent his life in climate-controlled offices, ordering salads, and drinking filtered water. He was not built for this. The officer tossed a bundle at him. It hit him in the chest. "Put it on. Orange suits you." The jumpsuit was coarse, stiff, and smelled of industrial detergent that burned his nose. It was too big. He had to roll up the cuffs. He slid his feet into cheap rubber slides. "Inmate number," the officer said, printing a label. "That is your name now. Memorize it." Merrick was fingerprinted, the ink staining his manicured nails. Then came the mugshot. He tried to compose his face to look defiant, but when the flash went off, he just looked broken. They did not put him in a solitary cell, because the facility was overcrowded, and because he was not considered violent. Merrick was placed in the tank, a large holding cell for new arrivals awaiting arraignment. The heavy steel door clanged shut behind him with a sound of finality that echoed in his bones. The cell was occupied by about 20 men. The air was thick and humid. It smelled of unwashed bodies and the open toilet in the corner. Merrick stood by the door, hugging his arms to his chest, trying to make himself invisible. Well, a gravelly voice rasped from the metal bench along the back wall. Look what the cat dragged in. Or should I say what the rat dragged in? Merrick froze. He knew that voice. He turned slowly. Sitting on the bench, picking his teeth with a fingernail, was Vince Knuckles Riley. Years earlier, Merrick had prosecuted Riley for a racketeering charge. Riley had offered a plea deal for information on a bigger fish. Merrick, wanting a high-profile win for his conviction rate, had rejected the deal and pushed for the maximum sentence. He had called Riley a menace to society in his closing arguments. Riley stood up. He was shorter than Merrick, but he was built like a fire hydrant. Solid muscle and bad intentions. Mr. Caldwell. Riley grinned, revealing a gap where a front tooth used to be. I saw on the TV in the rec room. They said you got pinched. I told the boys. No, not Caldwell. He is the guy who puts us here. The other inmates circled around. They sensed blood. In prison, a lawyer, especially a prosecutor or a high-end corporate shark, was lower on the food chain than a snitch. It is a misunderstanding. Vince, Merrick stammered, his voice cracking. I will be out by morning. My firm. They are working on it. Your firm. Riley laughed, stepping closer. You think those suits care about you. You're radioactive, buddy. You're burnt toast. Riley reached out and flicked the collar of Merrick's orange jumpsuit. Nice fabric. Riley sneered. Not quite Italian silk, is it? Remember what you said to the judge about me. You said I lacked the moral fiber to live among decent people. How is your moral fiber doing now, Merrick? Merrick backed up until he hit the bars. Stay back. I can help you. I can look at your appeal. I do not need your help. Riley spat on the floor, inches from Merrick's rubber sandals. I got a public defender. He is a good kid. Honest, unlike you. Riley leaned in close, his breath smelling of stale coffee. You are lucky we are in federal holding, Caldwell. The guards watch the cameras here, but once you get to general population, you better learn how to fight or learn how to pray. Riley turned and walked away laughing. The other inmates laughed with him. Merrick slid down the wall, collapsing into a crouch. He pulled his knees to his chest. For the first time in his life, Merrick Caldwell cried. Not polite. Silent tears. Ugly, heaving sobs that shook his entire body. A guard banged on the bars. Caldwell. Phone call. You got minutes. Merrick scrambled up. This was it. The cavalry was coming. He dialed his wife, Lydia. They had been married for years. It was a marriage of convenience and status. She liked the country club membership. He liked having a trophy on his arm at galas. Collect call from inmate. The automated voice announced. Except Lydia's voice said it was sharp. Clipped. Lydia. Thank God. Merrick gasped into the receiver. You need to call the partner. Tell Grant I need the retainer released. I need the best criminal defense team we have. Get me out of here. Silence on the other end. Lydia, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. The FBI just left. They took the Jaguar. They put tape over the doors to your study. They served me with a freeze order on our joint accounts. I know it is a nightmare, but we can fight it. Just call Grant. I called Grant, Lydia said. He told me that the firm voted. You have been terminated for cause. Morals clause violation. You do not have a retainer anymore. Merrick. You do not have a job. Merrick felt the blood drain from his face. But the house equity, we can use that for bail. I spoke to my own lawyer. Merrick, Lydia said coldly, I am filing for divorce in the morning. I am claiming innocent spouse relief to try and salvage what is left of my credit. I cannot be tied to you, not with what they are saying on the news. Lydia, please. I am your husband. No, she said. You were an investment and you crashed. Do not call here again. Click. The dial tone hummed in his ear. He stood there holding the receiver until the guard snatched it from his hand. Time is up. The night passed in a blur of sleepless terror. Every noise made him jump. Every shout from down the hall sounded like a threat. Morning brought no relief. He was shackled again, chained to other men, including Sterling, who looked catatonic, and marched through a tunnel to the federal magistrate court. This was not the mahogany-paneled superior court with Judge Voss. This was a basement courtroom, smelling of lemon polish and despair. It was a processing factory for the damned. When Merrick's name was called, he shuffled to the podium. He instinctively looked for his legal team. He expected a phalanx of associates. Instead, a young woman with frizzy hair and coffee stains on her blouse approached the defense table. She dropped a heavy accordion folder with a thud. Ms. Bennett appointed for the defendant, she sighed, rubbing her temples. She did not even look at Merrick. Ms. Bennett, Merrick whispered frantically, I need to request a bail hearing. I have significant ties to the community. I am not a flight risk. She looked at him then. Her eyes were tired, dark circles underneath them. She looked like she had slept in her office. Mr. Caldwell, right, she said, flipping through a file. I read your sheet. RICO charges, money laundering, conspiracy, judicial bribery. The government has you on tape. They have the money. They have the judge flipping on you. You are not getting bail? The feds argue you have offshore accounts and are a high flight risk. You are staying inside. But I am a lawyer. I can help you with the strategy. She let out a short, dry laugh. Mr. Caldwell, you are not a lawyer today. You are a defendant. And honestly, you are my case this week. So here is the strategy. You stand there. You plead not guilty for now, and you pray the DOJ offers you a plea deal that involves less than years. Now, shush. Merrick stood there, mouth agape. He was being treated exactly how he had treated Darius Holt. He was being dismissed. He was a nuisance, a statistic. The magistrate read the charges. They went on for minutes. Each count carried a maximum of years. How do you plead? The magistrate asked. Not guilty, Ms. Bennett said mechanically, remanded to custody without bail. The magistrate banged the gavel. Next, as the marshals grabbed Merrick's arms to drag him away, he turned his head toward the gallery. Sitting in the back row, wearing a simple flannel shirt and a baseball cap, was Darius Holt. Darius was not smiling. He was not recording on a phone. He sat with his hands clasped, watching intently, their eyes locked. Merrick wanted to scream at him. He wanted to blame him. But when he looked into Darius's eyes, he saw something worse than anger. He saw pity. Darius offered a small, solemn nod. It was a goodbye. Move it, inmate. The marshal shoved Merrick. Merrick stumbled, his rubber sandals sliding on the floor, as he was led through the side door. Back toward the van, back toward the cage. The realization finally hit him with the force of a physical blow. He was not Merrick Caldwell, the Shark of Atlanta anymore. He was just another man in an orange suit who had underestimated the wrong person, and his education was just beginning. The silence at Oakwood Drive was different now. For some time, the silence had been heavy, loaded with suspicion. It was the kind of silence that made neighbors peek through their blinds, terrified of the black SUVs that idled in the driveway at late hours. It was the silence of a crime scene waiting to happen. But soon after the trial that shook the county to its foundations, The silence was peaceful. It was the sound of birds chirping in the old oak trees and the distant hum of a lawn mower down the street. Darius Holt stood on the front porch, the same porch where Sterling Langford had lied about being threatened with a shovel. Darius was sweeping away the dead leaves. He did not have to do this. The government seizure team was coming soon, but Darius believed in leaving a place better than he found it. He wore his signature gray flannel shirt and the worn work boots. To the casual observer, he still looked like the squatter Merrick Caldwell had sneered at, but the air around him had changed. He was not hunched with the weight of a cover story anymore. He stood tall, a man who had completed his watch. A screen door creaked open from the house next door. Darius paused, leaning on the broom. It was Mrs. Whitaker, an elderly woman who had spent time calling the police on him every time he put his trash cans out too early. She walked across the strip of grass separating their driveways, holding a Tupperware container covered in foil. She stopped at the foot of his porch steps, looking up at him with a mixture of embarrassment and awe. "Mr. Holt," she asked, her voice wavering. "Just Darius?" "Mrs. Whitaker," he said, offering a gentle smile. I wanted to bring you this," she said, holding up the container. "It is peach cobbler, my grandmother's recipe." Darius walked down the steps and took the container. It was still warm. "You did not have to do that, ma'am." "I did," she insisted, adjusting her glasses. "I saw the news. The Journal-Constitution said you were an agent, that you stopped those men from doing whatever they were doing with that money." She looked down at her shoes. "I called you a vagrant once. I told the neighborhood watch you were trouble. I judged you because of how you dressed and because you did not talk much. I am sorry, Darius. I was wrong." Darius placed a hand on her shoulder. It was a forgiving gesture, heavy and warm. "You were protecting your home, Mrs. Whitaker. That is what we do. You saw something that did not fit, and you were alert. I cannot fault you for that. Just promise me one thing." "Anything," she said. "Next time you see someone who looks like they are struggling," Darius said, gesturing to his own worn-out clothes, "maybe offer them a plate of cobbler before you call the cops. You never know who they might be." Mrs. Whitaker smiled, tears in her eyes. "I will, I promise." An hour later, a sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb. It was not the ominous SUVs of the cartel. It was a government-issue Ford Taurus. Agent Sophia Hale stepped out. She was not wearing her tactical vest today. She was in a sharp blazer, sunglasses perched on her head, holding a thick manila envelope. She walked up the driveway, her heels clicking on the pavement. She looked at the house, then at Darius. "You clean up good, Holt," she said, nodding at the swept porch. "For a guy who lived off canned beans for months." "Habit." Darius shrugged. He picked up his single duffel bag. It contained everything he owned in this life. A few shirts, the boots, and the badge tucked deep in the pocket. "Did you hear the update on the sentencing recommendations?" Hale asked, leaning against the porch railing. "I have been off the grid," Darius said. "Fill me in." "Sterling cracked first," Hale said with grim satisfaction. "He gave up the offshore accounts in the Caymans to cut a deal. He is looking at years, but he will be broke when he gets out. The DOJ seized everything. The Riverwalk project is being halted and audited, and Judge Voss resigned yesterday. He is facing disbarment and federal bribery charges. He is trying to plead insanity, claiming Caldwell manipulated him. It is pathetic." Darius nodded. "And Merrick? What about the shark?" Hale laughed, a dry, humorous sound. "Merrick is having a hard time. His assets are frozen. His wife filed for divorce, and since he was denied bail, he is currently residing in Unit D of the detention center. Rumor is he is actually reading the law books in the library now, trying to help other inmates with their appeals to buy protection." Seems he finally realized that helping the uneducated is his only survival strategy. Karma is a patient teacher, Darius murmured. He looked back at the house. The windows were dark. The secrets in the basement, the wall safe, the ledgers, the cash were all gone, tagged into evidence. So, Darius asked, what happens to the property? Standard auction. Some other developer comes in and bulldozes it. Hale smirked. She tapped the manila envelope against her hand. Actually, no. You made a request in your final report. You cited the community impact clause. Darius raised an eyebrow, and the director approved it, Hale said, handing him the envelope. The deed is being transferred to the Veterans Housing Initiative. This place is going to be a transition home for vets coming back from overseas who need a place to land while they get their degrees and retrain. Darius took the envelope. He looked at the paperwork. He felt a lump in his throat. He thought about his own time coming back from Afghanistan. The disorientation, the feeling of not fitting in. This house, which had been a monument to greed, would now be a sanctuary for brothers and sisters in arms. Good, Darius said, his voice thick. That is good. They got into the car. Hale took the driver's seat. Darius sat shotgun, tossing his duffel bag into the back. As they pulled away from the curb, Darius watched Oakwood Drive disappear in the side mirror. It was just a house again. They drove in silence for a while, navigating the winding suburban streets before hitting the highway toward Atlanta. The skyline rose in the distance, shimmering in the heat. I have to ask, Hale said, breaking the silence. She kept her eyes on the road. Shoot. In the courtroom, when Caldwell was grilling you, when he was humiliating you, you had the badge in your pocket the whole time. You could have ended it in minutes. You could have walked into his office day one and flashed the credentials. She glanced at him. Why let him drag you through the mud? Why let him call you trash in front of a gallery? Darius looked out the window. He watched the luxury cars speeding past them in the fast lane. The drivers in suits talking on their phones, oblivious to the world around them. If I had shown him the badge on day one, Darius said softly, he would have stopped because he was afraid. He would have respected the federal authority. He would have been polite. He would have backed off. Darius turned to look at Hale, but he would not have changed. He would have gone on to bully the next person who did not have a badge. He would have evicted the next family that could not fight back. Darius leaned back in the seat, closing his eyes. I did not want his respect, Sophia. I wanted his truth. I needed to see who he was when he thought no one was watching, when he thought he had absolute power over someone weak, the true measure of a man. Hale quoted, exactly, Darius said. You do not catch a predator by walking into the jungle with a siren. You catch him by looking like prey. Merrick Caldwell did not lose because I was a federal agent. He lost because he forgot that human dignity does not come with a price tag. Hale nodded. She merged onto the interstate, the car accelerating. Well, she said, the prey is going to Chicago next. We have a lead on a pharmaceutical CEO who is dumping toxic waste in a low-income neighborhood. He thinks the locals are too poor to sue him. Darius opened his eyes. A small, dangerous smile played on his lips. He adjusted his faded baseball cap. Does this CEO like to yell at people? Apparently, Hale grinned. He has quite the temper. Good, Darius said, settling in. I love a challenge. And that, my friends, is how the suit met the jumpsuit. Merrick Caldwell spent years building a tower of arrogance, thinking that his education, his money, and his connections made him a god among men. But he made the classic mistake. He judged a book by its cover. He looked at Darius Holt and saw a squatter, a nobody, a problem to be swept away. He did not see the discipline, the intelligence, or the federal warrant sitting in the back pocket of those faded jeans. The story of Darius and Merrick is not just about a satisfying court case. It is a lesson about integrity. Integrity is what you do when you have power over someone else. Merrick used his power to crush. Darius used his power to protect. In the end, the universe has a way of balancing the scales. The man who thought he owned the courtroom ended up in a cell, and the man he called trash turned a den of corruption into a home for heroes. It just goes to show, be careful who you step on. You never know who might be a sleeping lion. I want to know what you think. Did Merrick Caldwell get what he deserved? Or was the sentence too harsh? If you were Darius, would you have revealed your bad sooner? Or would you have waited for the perfect trap like he did? Let me know in the comments section below. I read every single one. If this story gave you that satisfying feeling of justice being served, please smash that like button. It helps the algorithm find more people who need to hear these stories. And if you have not already, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you do not miss our next episode. Next week, we are going to the Wild West, or at least a modern version of it. You will not want to miss it. Until then, stay humble and watch your